The Infinity Castle arc in Demon Slayer was already pretty intense with the current Hashira lineup, and even though they pulled off a win, things could have easily gone the other direction. So was there anything the Demon Slayer Corps could have done to change the course of the final battle? In today's video, we'll explore an alternate timeline where former Hashira also joined the battle in the Infinity Castle. Let's break this down into two timelines. The first is a practically possible reality, where retired Hashiras like Sakonji, Shinjiro, and Tengen return to fight in the Infinity Castle arc. The second timeline will look at an impossible what-if where the former Hashiras who died during the Taisho era, like Kanae, Kyojuro, and Jigoro, join the battle. Let's start off with our first timeline, where the retired veterans join the fight. Before that, we need to figure out why they didn't come along in the original story. And the reason is simple. They were the backup plan in case the Demon Slayers didn't win in the Infinity Castle. The children of the Ubuyashiki family were protected by Tengen, Urokodaki, and Shinjiro so that they could revive the Demon Slayer Corps if needed. Nezuko was also kept with them instead of being brought to the Infinity Castle, so that Muzan would not be able to steal her invulnerability to the sun if the Demon Slayers lost. That means, if the veterans fought in the Infinity Castle, that would put the Demon Slayers in a must-win situation because Nezuko and the Ubuyashiki heirs would have been completely vulnerable. But how would these Demon Slayers change the dynamic of the Infinity Castle battle? First up, we have Tanjiro's mentor, Urokodaki Sakonji. Considering his silver hair, Sakonji is probably well into his late 50s, but still possesses incredible strength and agility compared to the average human. Even though he might not have the raw speed he once possessed, Sakonji's experience would be invaluable as a strategist. Just imagine him fighting alongside Tanjiro and Giyu against Akaza. 3 generations of water breathing would come together with each of their unique fighting styles to overpower the demon. However, the most emotionally compelling return would be Rengoku Shinjiro's journey from bitter alcoholic to reclaiming his flame. Given that Shinjiro is pretty young, probably in his mid-40s, he would be more capable than Sakonji in battle. As the returning Flame Hashira, Shinjiro's fighting style would likely be more brutal than Kyojuro's, as he carries the weight of many years of regret on his shoulders. The ideal fight for Shinjiro would be to battle Akaza alongside the other Hashira, giving him the chance to avenge his son's death. But in practical terms, the most impactful return would be Tengen, as he's easily the most capable among the retired Hashira. You could argue that Tengen is still capable of taking down an Upper Moon, since he beat Gyutaro even after losing an arm and an eye. But that was partially because he had already figured out Gyutaro's rhythm by that point. Even if Tengen can't take down an Upper Moon on his own in his current state, the former Hashira still has plenty of options to be pretty useful in a support role. Tengen's sound breathing techniques, especially those assisted by bombs, could easily disrupt blood demon arts and create openings for stronger swordsmen to attack. But how does the presence of these 3 former Hashira change the overall outcome of the Infinity Castle battle? Well, we first need to figure out where exactly they will be fighting. The older Hashiras won't be able to keep up in the Kokushibo and Doma fights, so you've gotta leave them out of those. You could put them up against Kaigaku, but that sort of messes up the emotional payoff of Zenitsu fighting to save Jigoro's legacy. What that means is that they'll probably start off facing Nakime or Akaza, and that's where things get tricky, because having an extra Hashira won't really help against Nakime. The Biwa demon's ability would actually work much better against the older and slower swordsman, and the MVP in that fight was Yushiro all along anyway. So that leaves us with Akaza, and this is where Sakonji and Shinjiro could make a huge difference, because if you think about it, the Upper Moon 3's fighting style is not really well suited to taking on multiple opponents. While Shinjiro and Sakonji might get taken out because of their inability to tank hits like Tanjiro or dodge like Giyu, the younger Demon Slayers will have much more energy in reserve when they move on to the Sunrise Countdown against Muzan. What about Tengen? We'll leave him out of the Akaza fight since that's already covered. And while Doma's flashy style would surely impress him, the best fit for Tengen would actually be the battle against Kokushibo. Think about it. The main factor that held back the Demon Slayers was Kokushibo's unpredictable moon-breathing style, but Tengen's musical score technique is the perfect counter. However, this depends on Tengen not rushing into battle first and being able to avoid Kokushibo's attacks for a while. Considering his battle IQ and speed feats, this isn't actually that unlikely. In a world where Tengen joins the fight, we might even see Muichiro and Genya surviving to take on Muzan. But now let's get into the fun part of the video, where we look at what would happen if former Hashiras that died before the Infinity Castle arc somehow survived to fight another day. Let's start off with none other than the thunder-breathing user who was so powerful that he got the unique title of Rumble Hashira when he was fighting demons. In this version of events, Jigoro does not commit seppuku after Kaigaku defects to the demons, but instead vows to kill his former pupil or die trying. This means he will fight alongside Zenitsu when he falls into the Infinity Castle. However, having the support of his beloved Gramps would be a double-edged sword for Zenitsu. On the one hand, it was Jigoro's death that unlocked Zenitsu's full potential and took him to a level where he could casually blitz an Upper Moon, whose specialty was also speed. While Zenitsu might still be weaker, the psychological boost of having Jigoro by his side would compensate for that. But the real issue is that Jigoro lost a leg in the past and would only be able to perform his thunder-breathing techniques at half power. This means that Zenitsu might be occupied defending Jigoro, and he's likely to die in battle regardless. However, the rage of losing his master would be enough to unlock Zenitsu's full potential, along with his Demon Slayer mark, leading to a victory over Kaigaku. So far, the only real benefit we have is the emotional payoff. But what if the Flower Hashira, Kocho Kanae, was able to survive Doma's attack all those years ago and live to battle in the Infinity Castle? This would probably make the fight against Doma pretty one-sided, because it also means that Kanao would grow up with a mentor to guide her in the ways of flower breathing. However, Kanae being alive also eliminates Shinobu's motivation to saturate her body with wisteria poison. So on balance, it appears as if the Demon Slayers will end up losing out on their one significant advantage in that battle. But there might be another level to this, since having a Hashira that's capable of beheading an upper moon means that Shinobu can successfully employ a strategy of gradually poisoning Doma. The only reason this didn't work in the original battle was because Shinobu had no way of putting pressure on Doma's regeneration abilities or stamina, but the deadly nature of Kanae's flower breathing would fulfill that condition. Thus, the longer the battle goes on, the more effective Shinobu becomes, and chances are both the Kocho sisters will be alive by the time Inosuke and Kanao arrive on the scene. At this point, things will get difficult for Doma, since the brute force of beast breathing also complements Shinobu's style of attack, and would create more openings for her to poison the upper moon too. But the real question is, would this be enough to save everyone who faces off against Doma? And the unfortunate answer is that the scale of his blood demon art would probably take out a demon slayer or two before he falls. The likely outcome here is the two Hashira surviving to go on to face Muzan, while either Inosuke or Kanao succumb to an ice attack, prematurely ending their journey. But finally, let's look at the most exciting return of them all, the Flame Hashira, who burns brighter than everyone else, Rengoku Kyojuro. For this to work out, Kyojuro would have to hold out against Akaza until dawn after the Battle of the Mugen Train, and only suffer injuries that he can recover from. Now, while this may feel impossible, it's actually not even that difficult, since Kyojuro only missed dawn by a matter of minutes. This means all he needs is a bit of luck to survive the encounter until the sunrise forces Akaza to retreat. Kyojuro's return would be the emotional centerpiece of this scenario, and a rematch with Akaza would be the ideal fight for him in the Infinity Castle. Backed up by Tanjiro, Giyu, and his father, Kyojuro's breathing style would shine even brighter than before, making the Akaza fight much less close than it originally was. The key difference in this timeline becomes evident in the final showdown against Muzan, as it becomes the equivalent of having about 3 more Hashira fighting against the Demon King. As a result, we can imagine a world where way more of them survive to see sunrise, perhaps with Obanai and Mitsuri managing to be together in this timeline, instead of the afterlife. Bonds between student and master, father and son would remain unbroken, leading to a much brighter ending than the original one. What do you think? Would these additions make the battles too easy, or would Muzan and his demons find a way to counter this overwhelming force? Let us know in the comments which Hashira return you'd like to see most.